What's going on, guys? Welcome to the BQ Chicken NBA podcast. It's called the BQ Chicken because everybody else is barbecue chicken to us. With me is my fellow NBA fan and analyst, Q McGee. How you doing today, Q?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Owen?
I'm doing great. As Q said, my name is Noel Beaumont. I'm the B in the BQ. He's the Q in the BQ. You know how we do. Basically, today we're just going to be talking about some of the just kind of getting our first reactions of the first game of the NBA playoffs for each series. And if I could say myself, Q, this is probably going to be one of the most entertaining playoff brackets we've seen in probably 3 or 4 years now.
No, for sure. It's matchups is the key thing about these ones. It's been pretty entertaining through the first couple games so far.
Yeah, and especially the fact that we had great games to start out, and we're going to start out kind of just going over every single game.
Mhm.
And the first game of the day of the Saturday, first game of the weekend was the Bucks and the Heat, and that one was a great way to start the weekend. You know, it was an overtime thriller. You had
Yeah,
Giannis dropping 26 and 18. You had Chris Middleton hitting the game winner. You had Goran Dragic coming off the bench and scoring 25 points. Uh, and the Bucks averaging coming out with the win after Giannis is coming out saying stuff like, "We this could be the same thing that happened last year."
yeah.
What do you think about that, Q? When someone comes out, especially the captain of a team, and says something like that? If you're on that team, what would you think?
Hey, I'm just thinking like we just got to do whatever it takes to win. And everybody just got to strap on and just play their role, play it the best way they can. So,
Yeah, and this a big key to this game is the fact that Jimmy Butler didn't have the best game. He shot
mhm,
4 for 22, still had 17 points, but didn't seem very productive in my eyes.
mhm.
It wasn't the Jimmy Butler that we're used to seeing. Do you think in this next game that they play, do you think Jimmy Butler is going to turn the lights up a little bit more than the last game?
Nah, they definitely will. Jimmy and even Bam Adebayo to not have the best game. Bam shot 26% from the field, and for him and Jimmy to not play and only lose by two, the Bucks have to definitely step up their game as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Bam was just almost non-existent in this game. He only had 9 points. So the Bucks did something very well. They were able to shut Bam out of this game, but I don't know if they'll be able to do it 2 games in a row like they did.
For sure.
Another big factor that I found from this game was the 3-point shooting. So in total, the Miami Heat, they shot 99 shots, and out of those 99 shots, 50 of them were 3-pointers.
Mm,
So shooting like that and only shooting 40%, they only made 23s,
yeah.
is it's just unacceptable. And
Mhm.
both teams really just were not shooting the three ball very well. The Bucks shot 5 for 31. That's 16%.
Yeah. If
And the
they
fact
want
that
to
they
stay in those other games, they're going to have to step that up.
exactly, that's what I think. And the fact that the Bucks only made 5 threes and still won the game is
Mhm.
almost bewildering because the game now has translated into a 3-point shooting game. And that's almost like an old school victory for the Bucks in this matter.
For sure. They
Yeah.
are going to have to step that up because the Heat are just a team that they know how to defend. They'll throw different defenses at you. You got to be prepared for it, and all of their shooters just weren't feeling it.
Yeah, and this is something that really caught my eye, but Eric Spoelstra wasn't able to stop them in the paint. The Bucks had 56 points in the paint compared to the Miami Heat, who had 24 points in the paint. So what that tells me is that the Heat are not they obviously weren't able to score with Bam, and so they relied on Duncan Robinson, who had a solid 24. He had a very respectful game,
Mhm.
and but you're gonna have a better shooting. You're gonna have a better chance to make the shot if you're closer to the bucket, if that makes sense.
I give that credit to that to Brook Lopez. Like he's really underrated in how he is able to defend the paint, and of course, you got Giannis down there he's gonna use his arms to stop everything and get down there. So
Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize that Brook Lopez is a solid defensive player because everybody sees him more as an offensive player since he's
Mhm.
developed that 3-point shot. So
Yeah,
he doesn't really get as much attention on the defensive side of the ball.
for sure.
And so for this series, Q, after seeing that first game, I think it's going to be extremely competitive,
Mhm.
especially with that bad blood from last season getting swept from the Heat sweeping the Bucks.
Mhm.
I'm going to take the Bucks in 6 on this one. What are you thinking?
Uh, I was going to take the Bucks in six, but I think the Bucks can just hold them down to one game. Honestly. Just one.
Yeah, because if they come out with that same firepower, and the craziest thing is with this game, we didn't even talk about Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
Drew Holiday came out and had a solid 20 points. So it was fairly even scoring all the way around for the big three in Milwaukee.
One thing for all three of them, Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday all scoring in double figures. That's something that's going to have to stay consistent if they want to win. But you got DiVincenzo who gave you 10 rebounds, and he consistently has done this throughout the year, just stayed on the glass, getting second chance opportunities.
Yeah, that's what I love about Dante. I've been following Dante ever since he got into the league. After I watched him in the national championship come off the bench and score 30 points, Dante's a dog. Like he's able to do everything he wants because he's a scrapper. He likes to hustle for the basketball, and that's what I love about some of these players now that they're finally starting to play with a little more initiative and try to go get the ball.
Yep. Bucks and 5.
Bucks and 5. Okay. All right. I'm gonna take Bucks and 6 on this one, but at least we're both agreeing on the Bucks winning this series.
Yeah.
All right. So to move on to the next game, we have the Clippers and the Mavericks. In this game, the Mavericks defeated the Clippers, which was I would say a shock to a lot of people. Luka came out and dropped a triple-double, doing what Luka does, 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists. Four players on Dallas did have over 15 points in this game. So it shows you kind of how they're able to space the ball out a little bit more. Kawhi also had a solid game, 26 points, 10 rebounds, and a little highlight play to go on top of that, dunking over Maxi Kleber. Paul George, everyone was calling him Pandemic P, I heard, during this game because he did have a couple bad shots, but he was still able to get 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. What's your first reaction, Q, after seeing this kind of performances from both teams?
The first reaction, I'm not too worried about the Clippers, but they should definitely try to fix anything that's going on right now. But the Mavericks came out and played basketball. They play how they played all season. They came out and were ready for any pass that Luka threw at them. They were ready for their jump shots. They shot 47% from the three, so that's what killed them.
Yep, and it's another situation like the last game. You have the Clippers who shot 27.5%. They only made 11 threes on 40 shot attempts from behind the line. But another big thing for me is the craziest thing is that Dallas had 12 turnovers compared to Los Angeles's 5 turnovers. So the fact that they're able to still turn the ball over this many times and still come out with a 10-point win is kind of unsettling for the Clippers, knowing that even if they protect the ball, they still can't put it in the rim.
No, for sure. One thing I know, just outside of 3-point shooting, they let Jalen Brunson get a couple and one buckets in the paint, like deep in the paint. That shouldn't have happened. They got to be able to defend the paint better. That goes for Luka definitely as well. So
yeah, and this is another matchup from the bubble that went to 7 games. Nobody was expecting the Mavericks to come out and do that to the Los Angeles Clippers of Kawhi and Paul George, but we're doing the same thing that we did last year, Q. We're underestimating this Dallas Mavericks team, and they're starting to prove everybody wrong once again.
Yeah, and my boy Tim Hardaway, he's going to give you what he's going to give you, but if the Clippers want to be able to stop any momentum that the Mavericks have, they have to be able to put Luka in pick and roll and pick them apart and get them in foul trouble. That's it.
Exactly. So for this game, Q, I'm taking the Clippers in 7 on this one. I think Dallas is going to take them all the way to 7 games. And I think I think it's going to go back to 7 games again, and the Clippers are going to take it.
7 games. I'm going to have to go Clippers in 6. Clippers in 6.
Clippers in 6. All right. Yeah, this is just another crazy one, man. Like, it's so insane because nobody was expecting this team to come out and do this to the Clippers. And it didn't even seem like either team was dominating. It's just those little runs that you had towards the end of the game is what kills you.
And I'll be honest, the Clippers just weren't hitting the same shots that they hit in the regular season from the 3-point line. So
you hope you just want to sit there and think maybe it's just those playoff jitters. You're trying to get those out of the way now so you can capitalize on those opportunities later in the series.
Sure.
All right, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the third game. This one's probably going to be a little shorter because, this was somewhat of a dominant win
Yeah.
But the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics, the Brooklyn Nets won this game 104-93. It's an 11-point win. Kevin Durant had 32 points and 12 rebounds, and then you also had James Harden and Kyrie Irving dropping
Yeah.
buckets as well. This is one thing that we talked about earlier, Q, that scares. I would think would scare the team that the Nets are playing, and also the Nets themselves, is that the big three combined for 82 points of their 104. So 22 other points there's only 22 points coming from anybody else.
Yep.
What are your reactions to those kind of numbers?
Honestly, I don't think the Celtics played bad defense in that game. You got three of the best scorers in the league today. You can put them in any order. Is based off of preference, but any shots that they hit, you got to live with it. And they missed a lot of shots in the first half, honestly. But that you just got to live with it and keep moving and keep scoring the ball. That's where they got lost at.
Yeah, and like if you watch that game, you could see that the Boston Celtics were kind of hanging with the Brooklyn Nets a little bit. You know, they weren't going away. Jason Tatum was doing what he could to keep him in the game. He had 22 points. The only downside is that he was only shooting 6 for 20. He didn't have the best night shooting the basketball. And in these cases, this is where Kemba Walker needs to step up. He was starting to make shots late in the game. He had, I believe, 15 points at the end of this game, but Kemba needs to play more consistent. He needs to drop a couple more dimes, get his players involved on the floor. But one guy that did surprise me a lot was Robert Williams III, who came out and had 9. He almost had a double-double with blocks. He had 9 blocks and 11 points. Do you think that Robert Williams could be the underdog, the kind of the small player to step up when the big light's on him?
He stepped up definitely in the moment that he needed to have, but I don't think he's their X factor. But he is going to be the reason why he has to consistently play and defend the paint for them to stay in those games. Honestly,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as he stays out of foul trouble, I think the Celtics could get a couple games instead of getting swept, which I think we're all predicting the Nets to get swept or to sweep the Celtics. But if they can keep Robert Williams in Boston for a little bit, he's going to be a solid center for the future of the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and possibly this somebody from the solid draft class that they're going to get. But for my prediction for this series, I got the Nets in 4. This Nets team is one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen. And we've seen the likes of the Big 4 in Golden State. We've seen the Big 3 in Miami. We've seen LeBron and Kyrie team up in Cleveland. And we've even seen KD, Russ, and Harden in OKC. So this is easily probably the best super team that we've seen since the Big 3 in Golden State.
Yep. So I'm going to go Celtics are going to steal one. They'll take that first game at home, I think, for them. You got Robert Williams. I think he'll consistently play well throughout the series, but Jason Tatum and Kemba aren't going to play the same way in the second half as they did this first game. So they'll be able to fix all their issues and pull out a win, I think.
Yeah, the Garden is always one of the hardest places to play in, especially when it's playoff time. You know, and there's going to be fans there. It's going to be really rowdy. Boston takes their basketball very seriously up there.
Yeah.
All right, and then the final matchup for Saturday, it was the Nuggets and the Trailblazers. They had the night game. The Nuggets did fall to the Trailblazers, 123-109. Joker came out and had another MVP performance, some would say, 34 points, 16 rebounds. Michael Porter Jr. had 25 points and 9 rebounds. But Damian Lillard stole the show with 34 points, 13 assists, just being Dame Doll the way he does. And then CJ came out with a respectful 21 points as well. What's your reaction to this series, Q? Because this is a series that a couple of years ago, the Blazers upset the Nuggets and went to the Western Conference Finals.
This series, honestly, Dame is going to carry the Trailblazers, my bad. But the Nuggets, they took a major hit just losing Jamal Murray. So I think they come into this understanding that we're probably not going to win. Of course, the team doesn't think like that, but just not having your star player there to help you alongside the possible MVP of the league, it'll be a tough one to pull out with maybe 4 and 5 on the list of best scorers in the NBA right now, Damian Lillard and CJ.
Yeah, and also with the Trailblazers, 6 out of the 8 players that played scored in double digits, which
Yeah.
shows you that they're definitely they're sharing the ball a lot. And you have Carmelo on that team who had 12 points off the bench, who was actually booed when he went back there. So
Mhm.
he got some revenge back for the Nuggets. And the
Yeah.
craziest thing is we didn't even think about that kind of matchup. Melo
Mhm.
returning to his old team in Denver.
Yeah, for
When
sure.
but also the biggest thing in this game for me was the free throws.
Mhm.
Uh, Portland did have they shot 18. They shot 19 free throws and made 18 of those.
Mhm.
And Denver only made 4 of the 8 that they shot. So what that tells me is that the Trailblazers are being the more aggressive team. They're getting to the bucket. They're getting their fouls called, and they're getting to the line. Whereas the Nuggets aren't doing that as much. They're playing very passively, and they're trying to play through Jokic every time he gets on the floor.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
And
No,
then
this
another
series will
thing
be
that
great for sure.
Yeah, and then another thing that needs to change for me if the Nuggets want to win this game is Michael Porter Jr.'s basketball IQ. That dude does not have an IQ to save his life. Oh my
I've
gosh,
struggled
Q.
with it all year. Since he got into the league, I struggle with it. His scoring has gotten a lot better. I'll give him that, but I think he just doesn't make some of the right decisions when the time comes, honestly.
Yeah, like there was a fast break opportunity that he had, and it was 1-on-4, so he was definitely outnumbered.
Yeah.
And the decision he makes is to shoot a three at the top of the key. Now, at the end of this game, Q, he was shooting 1 for 10 from behind the line because he just jacks
Yeah.
stuff up, hoping it goes in. What are your thoughts about that kind of stuff from the league? You see around the league, people are just kind of shooting the shoot instead of shooting with a purpose.
I have, I have an issue with it. Like, honestly, I remember seeing it in that playing matchup with the Grizzlies and the Warriors. Steph, it's a 2-on-1. Nobody's coming down the floor yet because they just got the ball on the turnover. Steph pulls up for a three, mind you. The momentum is with the Grizzlies, and he takes that three. He's the best shooter of all time, but in that moment, I still wouldn't have taken it if I was him. So,
Exactly. Like, excuse me. The way I see it is that a fast break is basically free points if you
yeah,
look at it, even if you're outnumbered.
yeah,
If you're outnumbered and you just wait a couple more seconds for one of your teammates to run down the floor,
yeah.
there's 2, 3, 4 options that open up for you that can lead to a basket.
Yeah, for sure. And that's not the only time we've seen that with the Nuggets. They had a moment this year where every single player ran out to the 3-point line and it was nobody that collapsed to the bucket. So,
Yeah, and so to predict this game, it's a tough one because you have to think of a few years ago when Dame called a game on the Oklahoma City Thunder. That was only 5 games, which I think
yeah.
everybody was expecting Oklahoma City to win when they had Russ and Paul George on that team.
Hmm.
But I think it's going to be the Blazers in 5.
Blazers in 5. I'll go with you on that one.
All
Blazers.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think Damian Lillard just gets hot in these games, man. When there's so much on the line,
Yeah,
and you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him, and those are the scariest players that can be on the court.
for sure. You making valid statements with that, but I think the scarier player is just the way CJ McCollum is able to dissect the defense and the way he can score.
That's still crazy to me. The fact that CJ McCollum is still such an underrated basketball player, and maybe that's solely because he's playing with Damian Lillard, but it just blows my mind that nobody thinks twice about CJ McCollum
For
because he's a
sure.
bucket getter.
Yeah, he's always going to give you buckets. So he's another player you got to hope to contain him. Gotta
Exactly.
limit the shots he makes.
All right, so that's going to wrap up the matchups for Saturday. We're going to the matchups for Sunday. They started with the 76ers versus the Wizards in Philly.
Yeah.
The Sixers won this game 125-118 with a controversial call at the end of this game. Uh, to start off, Joel Embiid had 30 points, but the biggest surprise was Tobias Harris leading the 76ers with 37 points. I believe he had 28 points at the end of the first half. What does this show you about Tobias Harris? Because I think a lot of people kind of forgot about him.
Tobias, that's the dude. I think he's a player that's been searching for his respect since Orlando Magic days. So he's just he does play like an all-star, like he is. He played like an all-star. He gave them what they needed, but honestly, if they didn't get that from Tobias, the Wizards could have got that game. Honestly,
Exactly. I agree with that. And then Ben Simmons, he had 15 rebounds, 15 assists. Didn't do
Mhm.
much scoring wise, but he was
Yeah.
able to facilitate and get
Mhm.
his teammates involved in this game.
For sure.
On the Wizards side of the ball, Bradley Beal had 33 points and 10 rebounds, a solid double double from Bradley. And then Russ didn't have the best shooting performance of the night, but he had 16 points, but he also had 14 assists to accompany that.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's get into this controversial call. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's towards the end of the game. Daniel Gafford, he gets a rebound. He throws it to Russell Westbrook, but it's behind him, so he has to reach
Yeah.
back like this to go get it,
Mhm.
and it kind of throws him off balance a little bit.
Yeah.
And when he tries to keep the ball in play, his heel, I kind of just he lifts his heel over the boundary line
Yeah.
of the sideline, and the referee called him out of bounds. But even though they reviewed it, they still called out of bounds, but his heel never touched the floor.
Yeah.
Do you think they didn't review it or they didn't switch the call because they didn't have enough evidence, or do you think what do you think about that, Q?
I think they didn't switch the call because just going on something like that, trying to go back on what you did, you just kill the momentum for the team that you called it on. So it's just why not just go with it? I think the referees this year, they've been going downhill for a couple years, but they've been missing some stuff, and they so wishy washy on what they want to review, what they won't review is crazy to me.
Yeah, do you think that was more of like a thing where they're going for TV value, they're going for the drama of the game to keep the game alive?
Yeah, you definitely get into that. I think that's a tough thing. Like, a lot of people say they need certain teams to win, but being a referee on the floor is hard. They can't really think about that, but that's something that they should have got that one right and overturned that call, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just like you said, without the 37 from Tobias, this
Yeah,
could have been an easy win for the Washington Wizards. And on top of that, Russell Westbrook didn't have a triple double.
for sure.
So, and then it's just one of those crazy games where uh, the Wizards shot 55% from the field. They
Mhm.
were shooting fairly solid.
Yeah.
They weren't, and they shot 8 for 20 from three. So
Mhm.
they didn't shoot the best from three, but they were taking more chances at closer to the basket and getting those points than trying to shoot every single shot from outside the 3-point line.
Yeah. The Wizards, they have a more well-rounded offense that they can score in multiple ways. I think Philly is very not one-sided, but they can't score in too many ways. You either give it to Joel in the post, um, you give it to Tobias, which the numbers he put up is abnormal, although he's a great player. He's just not going to give you 30. What did he have? 35?
37.
37. He's not going to give you that every night, every
Yeah.
playoff. And Ben Simmons, for him to 6 points, you don't have to worry about scoring from him, but he shouldn't get 15 off rebounds at all. He shouldn't get
Or
15.
or even 15 assists in that matter. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, granted, Ben Simmons is a respected player
Mhm.
on the defensive side of the ball, but I
Yeah.
think he needs to definitely in this offseason develop some form of shot instead of trying to drive to the bucket every time he gets the ball. That's only going to help his case of being one of the most respected players in the league and an all-star.
For sure. For sure.
And then
So,
for this game, Q, I'm going to take the Sixers in 6 games. This is going to be a tough series for the Sixers because you have that drama between Russ and Embiid from a couple years ago.
yep.
We had some drama in Philly, drama in
Yeah.
OKC. But I think this is going to be a gritty, a hard fought victory for the Sixers in 6 games.
I'm gonna go with you that one. Sixers and six, just because the injuries that the Wizards took this year just really hurt them. Thomas Bryant can stretch that floor. That would have been a great piece to have for Russ to kick it out to, and losing Denny. So Sixers and six, I'm gonna roll with you on that one.
Yeah, and also like Davis Bertans, he has not been finding it anywhere. He has not been finding the stroke that he used to have last season.
Honestly,
It's just like I mean, granted, he still shot like 4 for 8, I believe, from behind the line, but
Mhm.
he's getting very, very inconsistent, and he needs to figure out a way to catch and shoot rather than just come off a screen and try to just throw it up.
I'll put him on the bench. Honestly, he's even the whole end of the regular season, all year, I don't think he's made any effect to anything. He got that money and didn't make any effect. You got to find some other players that'll make an impact on the game, and he's just not doing it. He can't defend anyone at all. So
I know, yeah. It's if the Wizards want a chance, they got to find people that'll consistently score for them, like possibly Daniel Gafford. Maybe get Daniel Gafford some more minutes in there because he
yeah,
runs that pick and roll so beautifully with Beal and Russ.
for sure. Yeah.
All right. So to move on to the next game, we have the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Lakers. This was a pretty controversial and a pretty gritty and very tough matchup for both teams. But the Suns came out with the win, 99-90. We did see Chris Paul and LeBron get a couple of injuries, but they did end up returning to the game. So both of them are hopefully in good health for game 2.
Yep.
But with this game, Devin Booker had himself a game, one of the best games that we've seen him have in a very long time. 34 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. And also with this, DeAndre Ayton came out of nowhere with 21 points and 16 rebounds.
Yeah.
What does this say to you that DeAndre Ayton was this dominant, even especially with Anthony Davis and a big body like Andre Drummond down there protecting the paint?
Honestly, I think Ayton played very well, and he took that game that when AD dropped 42 on him, he took that personal, and he just came out with a vengeance and was just bringing energy. That entire team just had more energy than the Lakers the whole game. So they just
Do you
got to
think that? Do you think this is something Ayton can carry into the rest of this series and possibly the rest of the rest of the playoffs if they make it out of this series?
I think he'll bring the effort, but I don't think he'll bring those numbers anymore. Vogel, and we've seen the Lakers make some good adjustments where they've been able to just do some things. AD has to find a way to get some rebounds. Drummond has to be who he is and get some boards and put the ball back in and actually make the shots he puts up. But Ayton, he's definitely going to bring the energy. Jay Crowder is going to bang down in the paint with everyone. You got to watch out for Sarge too. Sarge can get some buckets here and there. So that'll be something the Lakers just got to be ready for anything that they throw at them.
Yep. And then there was a lot of drama in this game. You know, we had LeBron coming out with 18 points, 10 assists. Anthony Davis, 13 points, 7 rebounds. Yep. The biggest thing for me, Q, was that for the Los Angeles Lakers, nobody scored over 20 points. Mm-hmm. And you need either LeBron or Anthony Davis to be the leader on the floor and to be the main scorer on that team. Mm-hmm. And if neither of them can score over 20 points, then it's not going to be a good night for the Lakers.
Yeah, not at all. They combined, AD and LeBron didn't score more points than Devin Booker, and I believe he also took less shots as well than both of them combined. AD came out and said he just has to play better, and honestly, I think that's what happened. You have LeBron and Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis had a long injury that kept him out for a long time, but he came back at the end of the season and showed that he can just still score the ball, still play, and affect the game how he can. So for the Lakers to win the series, they're going to have to do that and just also they got to get more energy out of Drummond and Schroeder. Drummond gave him 12 points, but it just wasn't it. Schroeder also gave him 14. It just wasn't enough, though.
Yeah, and then this is another big thing for me, Q, was the rebound margin. Yep. The Suns out-rebounded the Lakers 47-33. Mm-hmm. And when you have guys like Andre Drummond and Anthony Davis, who like when he's with the Pistons and the Cavaliers leading mm-hmm. the league in rebounds, it's unacceptable that you can't box somebody out and get a board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With those, Drummond he just looked in that game, he looked like the big penguin out there just standing still, not knowing what to do, honestly. AD I think he was trying to fill it out a little too much. He just has to realize he just got to get down there and bang. I think he went through the first quarter for a while in the first quarter not having a rebound at all, which that shouldn't happen, honestly. So you got a lot of energy from those guys like Caruso. Caruso has been able to play well, but AD has to just play harder. Without AD playing hard, I think it makes it hard on Drummond too, but everything that they did just wasn't acceptable for that win. And Devin Booker just played great, bro. He played great. Gave him all that.
And this is something I think Devin Booker can do through the
Mhm.
rest of this series, he's going to drop at least 25 points in every single game. Like the guard play for the Lakers has not been the greatest unless LeBron is running the point.
Mhm.
And if they can find a way to keep Devin Booker under 25, then I think they'll win the game if they can keep Devin Booker under 25 points.
Yeah, for sure. They started making adjustments. If I was Vogel, I would have started going into that zone defense. I think he waits very late to make some adjustments in some games. But I'm not too worried for the Lakers. They have one of the greatest of all time to play on NBA basketball. LeBron, he'll be able to. He just has to be more aggressive, get some more points. AD more aggressive. Um, and number one rated defense in the league, they'll be able to turn it around. But it's not going to be an easy thing to do. Phoenix has a lot of momentum, just playing better throughout the whole year. So it'll be great to see.
Yep. And then on top of that, you got LeBron's undefeated first round record going on the line here, 14-0 currently.
Yeah.
But another thing you talked about, Q, is that zone defense.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? Because nowadays you're seeing a lot of teams just turning to the zone defense where
Yeah.
you really only see it in the college level, and then that zone defense just kind of dies out once you get to the pros.
I think it's like you said, it's being seen a lot more, so it's acceptable now. Don't be nervous to do it. Lakers they stick to a lot of traditional ways of playing basketball, still running a big five at many times and not moving 80 down. But they just got to be quicker to make adjustments when stuff is not working. But at the same time, I don't fault them because they have good defenders that can really guard on the ball, and they've shown throughout the season they're the number one defensive rated team. So it's up in the air. I'm not a coach, but zone is something I would introduce into that series, so into that game.
Okay, and then what's your prediction for this series, Q? What are we doing with this series?
This series, I'm gonna go 4-2 Lakers.
4-2 to the Lakers?
Yep.
Okay. This is going to shock you, but I got the Suns in 5.
Suns in 5?
I got the Suns in 5 on this one. I think once they go back to the Staples Center, they're going to drop that first game when they get in there, and then after that, they're just going to I think they're just going to be able to adapt to their environment and just have a highlight game in the Staples Center. I think they're going to really perform very well in there.
All right, I like it. Making a great bet right there.
All right.
No.
I'm a big risk taker, so especially when it comes to my basketball game. So okay, the next matchup that we got is, in my opinion, this next matchup is going to be the most exciting series of the first round. It's the Knicks and the Hawks. In this game, the Hawks did come out with a game-winning floater from Trae Young to beat the Knicks in the Garden, 107-105. The biggest story behind this was probably Julius Randle, who didn't have the best game. He had 15 points and 12 rebounds on 6 of 23 shooting. And then on the other side, you have Trae Young with 32 points and 10 assists. And this is also something very surprising. Two big surprises in this game for me, Q, was Alec Burks coming off the bench and scoring 27 points. And then you also, on the other side, you have Bogdanovic shooting 4 for 9 from 3 and having 18 points to accompany Trae Young. What are your thoughts about this matchup? Because this is probably, in my opinion, the best matchup of the series of the playoffs so far.
I think this is both teams have about the same amount of talent, just great players on both sides. Got a lot of bench scoring for both teams as well. I think in this series, Julius Randle will have to just be able to beat them down, use his force, use his will to just beat them down and do what he does. But I know it'll be tough. You got to get your teammates involved. Atlanta, I don't see them stopping the Knicks for too many more games, honestly. The Knicks can defend very well, and that man D Rose coming off the bench is a problem. He's a problem.
Yeah, Derrick Rose came off the bench and had 17 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds. That veteran experience from Derrick Rose is something that the Knicks definitely needed on this team. And Derrick Rose was coming off the bench and just going at the basket. He wasn't going for threes. He wasn't going for any jump shots. He was attacking the rim, trying to draw fouls, and he wasn't even getting contact. He was just so shifty. It's almost like we were watching him back from 2011.
He has an automatic floater. He does not miss on those floaters that he takes. He doesn't miss.
And also, this is a story that kind of came up last week. But what are your thoughts on people calling Derrick Rose's game vintage?
I don't like it. It's not vintage. It's real basketball. He plays the game like a real basketball player. He doesn't do all the extra antics. He gets straight to it, straight to a bucket, get back and defend. So it's not vintage. Doesn't take unnecessary 3-pointers. They just the situation surrounding it. So
Yeah, it does seem a little disrespectful in some people's eyes because Derrick Rose, he's still playing basketball. It's not like he's retired. If you wanted to call, let's say you wanted to call like Larry Bird's game vintage, I guess that would be a little bit more respectful because he's retired, and B, the game's changed a lot from when he's been playing. So the fact that people are calling Derrick Rose vintage is just kind of stupid, honestly, because he's still playing and he's still getting his buckets, and it's just the fact that nobody's really doing anything about it to stop him.
Yeah, that mid range is something deadly too. His mid range is real. He's perfected it, I think, to a point.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And it's just like you don't see a whole lot of guards with mid-range shots anymore. You see them driving to the layup or driving for a layup and get contact, or you see them trying to stay out and facilitate and shoot a 3-point shot. And you see that with Trae Young. Trae Young's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
If he's not driving for a layup, try to get contact, he's pump faking and drawing contact that way to get a shot, which a lot of people would consider very, very terrible basketball.
I definitely get that. Yep. Hey, it'll be a great series to watch. Both sides, they're going to battle. Capella and Nerlens Noel, honestly, I think that's a matchup to watch out for too. Nerlens, ever since those injuries, he's played very consistent and just brought energy on the defensive end. And of course, Capella, if him and Trae Young can get that pick and roll going, it'll be a problem to stop. So
yeah, and then you have Trae Young, who, if I'm remembering correctly, Trae Young and John Collins are either first or third in alley-oop passes to each other, and then the other one is Trae Young to Clint Capella. Yeah. They run that pick and roll, and they just come off that screen for an alley-oop, and it's just too easy. It's too easy for them to get these pick and rolls like that.
For sure, I feel that. It'll be nice to watch, man. Nice to watch.
And then I think we can all agree that if you're watching that game, you saw the dunk of the playoffs with RJ Barrett just putting Bogdan on a poster for that game, and it was nasty. It was bad.
Honestly, I'm gonna contest that. Honestly, that Kawhi dunk on Max Kleber, that was crazy. So I'm gonna take Kawhi's dunk over RJ's.
I respect that because also on top of Kawhi's dunk, you have Paul George, Marcus Morris, and Kawhi all there yelling in his face after the dunk, which will be an iconic picture in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
But in this series, Q, because Julius Randle does average 37 points a game against the Hawks. Once he gets back to his old self and since he got those jitters out of the first game, being in the playoffs for the first time as a superstar, I'm going to take the Knicks in 6 on this one. I think they're going to drop another game in Atlanta, and then they're just going to finish the series out.
No, for sure. I definitely see Knicks in 6. I'm going to roll with you on that one.
All right, and then the final matchup that we have here is the Utah Jazz taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis Grizzlies, a team that nobody expected to be in this position. We all thought it was going to be the Golden State Warriors, but they're out here turning heads again with Donovan Mitchell out of this game. The Memphis Grizzlies did defeat the Celtics 112-109 to steal a game in Utah. The leading scorer, surprisingly for Utah, was Bojan Bogdanovic with 29 points. And then you have Mike Conley with a respectful 22 points in this game. And then on the other side, you have Ja Morant with 26 points. And Dillon Brooks putting his big boy pants on and dropping 31 points on this game as well. Could you see this series kind of turning bad blood? Because it was getting a little chippy there towards the end. They were kind of jawing a little bit. I think this could be a series, Q, that could maybe turn into some ejections, some pushing and shoving and stuff like that, some more drama, because every time you go to Utah, you're going to find drama.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely getting real chippy, but the Grizzlies have some players that have some firepower behind them. They're not going to back down from anything. Kyle Anderson, Ja Morant, that the center that they have he has been giving them some great minutes off the bench. Uh, Xavier Tillman, he's been giving them some great minutes. It's going to be some bad blood for sure. Because the Grizzlies just not going to back down. I think they keep some of that same energy of the past team with Zach Randolph, Mike Conley, and Marc Gasol. And I don't think you lose that spirit in that city. So just got to fight and grind.
Yeah, and a big story around this series is Donovan Mitchell not playing in game one.
Yep.
Donovan Mitchell really came out and said he was not happy with the Utah Jazz for sitting him for that game. And this could turn into a possible free agency position for Donovan Mitchell. He might not return to the team next year because of this. What are your thoughts on this? Because they did say he'll come out in game two and play for game two. But what are your thoughts on this this thing that Donovan Mitchell said?
Hey, I'm not mad at him for it, honestly. Donovan, he has a competitiveness in him that you don't find in too many players. But that dude, he has the opportunity to be a great player in the league. And I wouldn't be mad at him for feeling the way that he does. They say he is available to play in game two, so we'll see how it goes. I don't think his body and conditioning will be there ready. Like the Grizzlies just have a lot of momentum, and I don't think he'll be ready for the attention that I think they'll throw Dylan Brooks on him. And Dylan Brooks has been playing great defense for a while now, so I don't think he'll be ready for it. He'll definitely affect the game a little differently. But the Jazz just got to consistently score. Like they have good scoring numbers from everyone. I think the only thing I can say is Clarkson just brings some more energy off the bench. That's the best thing they can hope for, and some more points from Donovan Mitchell.
Yep, and I'd say the same thing from Joe Ingles from that team. But the scariest thing about this matchup, Q, is that the Grizzlies are such a young team. Yep. They have so much young talent on this team, and they just have these motors, and they just never stop. The only thing that can stop them is the amount of fouls that they could possibly get. But I don't really even see that happening much for this Grizzlies team.
Yeah.
And so to wrap up the final prediction, this is going to be a pretty crazy one, but I got the Jazz in 7 games.
7?
I think Memphis is going to take them to 7 games because the way that they battled without Donovan Mitchell on the floor, I think they could steal a couple more games in Memphis. I think the only way they win these next few games is if they're in Memphis. But Utah, I think, is going to edge out this win.
Honestly, I think it'll be a 7-game series, but I'm gonna go on the edge, and I'm gonna take the Grizzlies. The momentum that they have, I think it'll be able to carry them. That'll be the way they win the series. Having Donovan Mitchell back, that momentum will just have to carry them. They got to play good defensively, so I'm gonna take Grizzlies in 7. Grizzlies in 7.
I respect that because you've in the past few years we've seen Utah, we've seen this team compete, and they just have not been there for anybody. They were up 3-1 last year to the Denver Nuggets, and they lost that series. So what was the last time they were in the NBA Finals was with John Stockton and Karl Malone and John Havlicek, I believe, was it?
And they haven't made a lot of changes to this team, so it's going to be something they're just going to have to fight. Like a lot of us, we do sweep that under the rug that they were also up 3-1 to that Denver Nuggets team. So they definitely need to show up and prove themselves to everyone this year, I believe.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this year, if the Jazz don't do anything, I think we can see Donovan Mitchell moving to another team. I think they just start going into a rebuild phase. Yep. Trying to find something new for that team so they can get to at least the second round or something.
Yep, I can see it. Some be able to watch out for. Donovan Mitchell, that's a competitor. He wants to win championships. So Utah got to do something to be able to keep him there. So
yeah, I totally agree. But I think that's going to wrap it up for our first podcast here for the BQ Chicken Podcast. Q, do you have any last remarks regarding the NBA playoffs in the first round?
I don't. Hey, it's going to be some good series to watch. A lot of momentum, a lot of action still left to go. Only 1 game down. So I think we'll have some upsets too. So we'll see.
maybe we get March Madness, or we get March Madness like 9 months early. I think
Yeah,
it's going to be. I honestly think this is going to be the most entertaining playoffs in the last 9 years. Like this
for
is going
sure,
to be insane.
for sure.
But yeah, to wrap it up, again, my name is Noel Bamon. This is Quentin McGee. This is the BQ Chicken NBA podcast. And don't forget, if you're not
Sure.
watching our podcast, you're barbecue chicken. All right,
Yes.
take care, guys.